So this is our video for question 4. And the question is, how have you used technologies for research, planning, construction, post-production and evaluation? Okay, so in regards to research, we started off by watching Mirrorball, which were documentaries featuring archive footage of real music videos. And basically they feature interviews with real music video directors, so we kind of could look at real production practices that are used in actual videos and kind of try to incorporate them into our own work.
And then we also, as another part of our research, we looked at previous music videos in the same genre.
Yeah, using YouTube and Vevo. And these kind of helped us to identify common conventions of music videos, and also kind of common iconography used in music videos of the same genre, and like tropes and things that we could try and incorporate into our own work. In regards to ways in which we used this research in our own work, one of the music videos that was analysed in Mirrorball was It's Oh So Quiet by Bjork, and that was directed by Spike Jonze. And one of the things we used in that was a method called cranking. And so what it is when the music video is being filmed, they speed up the song so that in post-production, when the footage is slowed down, it looks like everything around the artist is happening in slow motion, even though they're still lip-syncing in time to the song. And so we use this in the bonfire scene when the artist is throwing the Polaroids onto the fire, just so that when the Polaroids are kind of flying, they're in slow motion, even though the lip-syncing is still in real time.
And then another example of a research finding that helped our own work was the music video called Girls by Hayley Kiyoko, which featured the same, like quite similar tropes to our own, about
so love, unrequited love,
yeah,
homosexuality, and a lot of kind of, it's very similar vibe. It was very kind of indie, so it had cigarettes, alcohol, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was one of the things that influenced representation-wise, especially.
Another video we used for representation was 1-800 by Logic.
So the video featured a teenage boy who is gay, and his parents don't know about it. And so this helped us kind of with representation and the idea of unrequited love, because it's kind of about like teen angst and the struggle that gay people can face in our current society, and difficulty with expression. So that was something that we tried to feature in our own work, kind of through like the iconography, the red and all the anger and unrequited love, and like especially with the corridor shot as well. That's a good display of it. And the kind of the school setting as well is very similar. It kind of helped to create a relatable kind of background for our target audience.
We carried out meaningful primary research using technology. First of all, we videoed interviews with the members of our target audience to establish what they would want in a video, and a typical fan of, say, Billie Eilish, who are artists for our video.
Yeah. We also read music magazines such as NME and kind of looked on similar websites to that to understand more about our genre and what people enjoy when they're listening to that kind of music and the things they expect. So like with like vibes and things, and the representation they expect to see within that subculture.
So to begin with, we use blogs to write down everything that we've done and everything that we plan to do in the future, which helped us kind of get to grips with what we are supposed to be doing and how far along we are into our project.
Yeah, so basically with each post, what we would do is we'd identify an area that we wanted to expand on. So after each blog post and each record of what we had done that particular session, we could then say what we wanted to do next time. So that always gave us a point to refer back to. We also created shot lists. So basically, while these kind of helped us piece together the music video, they also kind of acted as a list for the footage that we needed to collect. So while we were filming, we could refer back to the shot list and see what specific shots we needed to get. Basically, the blogs acted as a chronological progression of our work, and they helped to display how we moved from point A to point B, for example.
We use camera phones to take photos of different locations that we could possibly use, and then we took those photos and made a location recce. And then we looked at the location recce and chose which was most suitable for our work.
After using our location recce's to decide on which locations we wanted to use, we then went back and we used lighting to kind of frame how the specific locations would look in our actual video, especially with like the setting and the shadows and everything. And so, for example, with the bedroom scene, we wanted to know how it would look with the red light completely washed over it, and so we experimented with putting these at different angles just to kind of see the shadows that would be created in the actual shots themselves. And so after we did that, we then recorded those in our location recce as well, and that helped us to decide on our final locations for filming. So in terms of creating mood boards, what we did was we collected images off the internet with a similar kind of aesthetic to our own, or what we were aiming for anyway. And so apps like Tumblr and Pinterest were kind of ideal for finding niche images of a similar kind of vibe to our own, so like the whole kind of teenage girl kind of vibe in like the indie aesthetic. And then we edited these using iPhones as well. So for the positive images that would kind of form the kind of flashback montage in the video, we heightened the exposure so it was kind of more bright and it was more positive overall. And then for the bonfire scenes, we intensified the shadows on the pictures so it would appear darker and more negative, for example.
We compiled them in PicCollage to organise them effectively, which kind of gave us an idea of the images we wanted to collect.
In order to edit our video, we used Final Cut Pro, which was a piece of software that we'd used at AS level. And so our previous knowledge of the software gave us a basic understanding of how to use transitions and speed. But at A2 we could create far more sophisticated effects. So at A2 we used fade transitions. We watched YouTube tutorials on how to colour grade in order to maintain a far more consistent visual style. And we also used Adobe Audition to rectify the issue with the audio being too fast due to the footage having been filmed at a slightly faster FPS rate.
For our digipack and advert, we use Photoshop. We had no previous experience with this software, so we again had to watch YouTube tutorials on how to do it, which developed our understanding of the software.
So using these tutorials, we kind of learnt how to create and duplicate layers so that if mistakes were made on one layer, they could easily be rectified and we could revert back to the previous copy. We also learnt how to use different brushes. So for example, with the kind of finer areas of the background, we could use the eraser tool. And we also learnt how to kind of change the opacity and the hardness of these brushes to create a far more natural effect. So that worked well.
Our images were also downloaded from the internet, which meant we had to colour grade certain images and also use a burn tool to kind of make it look more authentic.
Yeah, because for example with the car, it was a very kind of bright image,
cartoony,
and it didn't look realistic.
And it didn't kind of fit the theme of our...
Yeah, it didn't fit the theme of the fire and the darkness, so we changed that and made it far more kind of shadowy and darker and burnt looking. And then also, in order to kind of build up the kind of dimensional aspect of the digipack, we found PNG photos which we could use. So these included like the sparks and the smoke and the
orange glow.
The orange glow, and they just kind of help to develop a background. Whereas if we had just kind of tried to draw these ourselves, they wouldn't have looked realistic. So those were good to use, and also again with those we changed the opacity so they didn't look too harsh or too...
It kind of blended in.
Too unrealistic, yeah.
The camera that we used was a Nikon
D5-100.
which was used consistently across all pieces of filming because it's easy to transport around, and it's also high definition resolution, so it's quite clear, and it also focuses really well, apart from one problem that we had, but we'll get to that later. We didn't need many extreme close-ups apart from one, therefore we used an 18 to 22mm lens, which was kind of a standard lens for the long shots and the mid shots that we used. However, there was a shallow depth of field, which meant the camera couldn't focus properly, so we had to go into settings and change quite a lot.
During the corridor shot.
During the corridor shot, yeah. So the f-stop needs to be as high as possible, which means the aperture on the shutter became smaller, which also kind of like shut out the amount of light that went into the shutter. There was a long depth of field, but it wasn't infinite because the aperture was set at 29. The ISO was set to 6500, which represents the speed of sensitivity of film, and we had to kind of play with these settings on the same camera because sometimes the shutter would be too small and the light wouldn't come through, so it made the footage grainy, and we had to film it about 6 different times. We also used an iPhone 7 camera and shot it in 4K because given the lighting at the time, it was a much more better quality and wasn't grainy, whereas when we filmed on the
D5-100.
it was grainy.
Yeah, because sometimes DSLR cameras, the problem is like in certain lightings they
don't work
as well. So it was far more effective using the
and it was really
iPhone
clear.
7 camera. Yeah,
And focus well.
and that was in the close-up of the eyes.
Yeah.
So in terms of storing our content, we created folders on the desktop for each individual component where we stored everything that we needed.
So it wasn't as disorganised as AS.
Yeah, because at AS what we did was we uploaded it all and it was just cluttered and we couldn't figure out where everything was. And then we also stored them on memory sticks as backups just in case the computer crashed or anything and we lost our work.
And then we named them by draft versions so that we always knew which piece we were working on at the time. And then we could revert back to previous copies if need be.
Yeah, if mistakes were made. So in the flashback montage we used the glow and blur effect kind of to emphasise that it was in the past and also to kind of create this more kind of happy, positive kind of atmosphere. But then further on, also using YouTube tutorials again, we colour graded this footage to ensure that it was still consistent with the kind of the red colour symbolism and the visual style that we'd created throughout the rest of the video. Also in some of the shots we had to change the intensity of the glow because sometimes it made some of the shots too high exposure, so they were too grainy or you couldn't see what was going on.
And then we also used fades in the build up to the chorus and in the jump cut of the Polaroid burning for a smoother and more refined edit. Another thing we used was the Ken Burns effect, which when we had a long shot for like a long duration, for example, when Charlie was sat on the bed lip syncing, it made it look more interesting, and it kind of like focuses on the expression of the protagonist.
So in terms of uploading footage, what we did this time was we uploaded it all to start off with, and then we systematically went through all of the footage we'd recorded and deleted what was unusable. And basically with each shot as well, to ensure that we always had good footage that we could use and to kind of select the best out of a bunch, we had filmed each different shot at a variety of different angles and with different lighting. So we went through each of these individually as well and deleted the ones that we didn't want to use and kept the best ones. Obviously we also kept the deleted footage backed up just in case we needed it for anything.
So at AS we kind of imported it all onto the computer at once, which made it really slow at rendering, and also it kept making the software crash because there was too much information going on.
In order to collect feedback with our work, what we did with each individual draft was we filmed feedback videos for members of our target audience as well as others to kind of collect a range. And this helped us to identify what was good about our work but also what needed work on. And so feedback we received from early rough cuts that we then obviously went on to develop was that with some of them at the start, where we were missing footage, there were just long black gaps. And whereas we wanted these to kind of be a build-up to the chorus, they kind of looked like technical errors. So what we did to kind of fix this was we added in fade transitions and kind of shortened the length of these as well, and went back and filmed more footage in order to fill those black gaps. We were also advised with the slap scene on the landing that we could use match on action here instead to create a more interesting technical effect. And
it looked more realistic, didn't it?
Yeah, so we went back and did this and kind of filmed it from a variety of angles, and it looked a lot more refined and professional. Then some of the footage as well in like the bonfire scene, for example, was quite low quality. So we went back and found different footage that we could replace it with, because obviously we had filmed a variety of different shots. Also, some of the shots cut off too quickly. I think we were quite wary of having shots drag on for too long, but with some of them we cut them off too short so that it didn't kind of have the emotional effect that we wanted it to, and it would just cut off and go to a blank space, and then it wouldn't look as effective.
I think you let that last shot go too soon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What, this one?
Yeah, because you really like emoting and then you just let it go.
Okay.
So we lengthened these, and then obviously here again we used the fade transitions in order to allow for that build-up of emotion while still making it look professional. And lastly as well, in the montage, like we were saying earlier, a lot of the shots were too like high exposure or grainy. So again, we went back and refilmed some of these, and like we were saying, we did some of these on the iPhone for a better, more extreme close-up, and this just worked more effectively.
And we also created questionnaires using a software called SurveyMonkey, which kind of collected our data for us, and then we put this data into a pie chart on Excel to organise the feedback more effectively.
So, in terms of the technologies we would have liked to have used, I think we could have used After Effects and kind of experimented more with the initial idea we had to have a Polaroid template and a green screen within it, so that we could play the scenes out in the template of the Polaroid in the montage scene, instead of just having the shots that we did, which were quite basic and normal.
However, our overall effect and vibe of the video was quite naturalistic, and a technical effect such as this may have kind of made it look too cheesy or abstract.